on the Sports Fix Radio Network. J-Rock back with you guys. And yes, Indians fever beaten. I know that the Indians lost last night, but I'm still feeling good. Matter of fact, I'm telling you, I'm giving the Indians a standing ovation for what they announced this morning. It's a bigger deal, I think, than people may realize. And Larry Doby, that was my biggest complaint. And I remember me and my man Andre Knott used to talk about this a lot, talk about it at Browns camp. And, not having a statue to honor Larry Doby, he really should have been next after Bob Feller. And really could have been argument that he should have been first. Could have been, should have been, however you want to look at it. And I'll talk a little bit about what he did here. But, I mean, that just made my morning. More than opening up the gates, they did a lot. We'll talk about the announcements that they made that they're going to really kind of tie in. We talked about it earlier, tying in downtown to the east and the west. They're going to tie in Progressive Field more into downtown. But head and shoulders to me, above all of those announcements that they made, was that they were finally going to fix the oversight. To me, it's been a massive oversight, and that is not having a statue honoring Larry Doby, and that has been corrected. Okay, so welcome back into the Sports Fix. Let's do that first. I get going here. I forget. Let's do this organizational style. Welcome back in. J-Rock back with you. 216-539-7535. Just a few maybe 8-10 minutes here on this segment, so we'll open up the phone lines, and then John McMullen's going to join us. We'll talk some Browns and NFL and all of that, so get in on the phones. We'll reopen them later, too. 216-539-7535, facebook.com/thesportsfix. Tweet with me, baby, at the Sports Fix, CLE. Email us, thesportsfix@AOL.com. Didalo on Twitter said no, that the Cavaliers do not win a championship in the next 2 years after trading for Kevin Love. Scotty, my man Jersey Dog on Facebook, said big grouping to give away, a lot given away, but he believes within 2 years the Cavaliers can win that championship too. Keep your conversation throughout the show rolling in with us, and email us, of course, thesportsfix@AOL.com. But I'm talking Tribe, and the announcements this morning, to me, overshadow talking about the results of a baseball game. We'll talk about that here in just a minute too, as the Tribe dropped one last night. And Danny Salazar, he didn't just drop a game, he dropped a level. He went down to AAA after that. But let's talk about the announcements the Indians made to enhance the fan experience at Progressive Field. And some of this was coming for a while. Some of it, hey, keeping up with the Joneses, much like the Browns do in there. And that's part of it too. This announcement by the Indians, the Browns upgrading things too. These are all improvements and privately financed, like some of the Browns was. Like this is privately financed here. Those things are just additional rejuvenations to downtown. This all ties into what I'm saying earlier, not just signing LeBron James and drafting John Manziel. It's all of that plus all of this. And there you go. And I will say with John, bring in some pitching with that money if you really want to enhance the fan experience. That was to a man the reaction that I've gotten from a lot of people here today, and most definitely in agreement with that. But Indians announced today that they're going to make a bunch of enhancements to Progressive Field to kind of rejuvenate the ballpark for next season, obviously hoping to attract some lapsed fans that have stopped attending the games, and this is a battle that sports teams in general fight. However, we've talked that it obviously more dramatically here in Cleveland with the attendance numbers, but fighting the battle of keeping people at home and how much easier it is, and not just easier, better the experience is with the TVs and the surround sound and the 3D TV. Man, I can watch a football game. I have one 3D television. I can watch the football game in 3D if I want. So that's pretty close to being there, man. You go mow the grass outside my window and it smells like I'm there, you know. I mean, but seriously, it's a competition to get people down there, get them out of their comfort zone, on top of the play on field and everything else. All of that. There's so many more intricacies and layers to it than people just, don't realize that. I mean, even if the teams winning. And I think you can see that in the Indians. I didn't even mention this, but I can tie it right into this. The news that's come out in the last couple of days that the Indians leading the ratings pack all throughout the summer here in Cleveland, in Northeast Ohio, on the cable ratings. I mean, best ratings in practically franchise history. I mean, more people watching the Indians on TV than ever, which is amazing because it's not, though. It shows exactly kind of what I'm mentioning here, that the interest in the team is at a high. It's at a peak, yet the attendance is in the conundrum that it's in as far as, we know. We've talked about it. You get the few games a year, and those are growing. You can see. I know you have to look into the game-by games to see it, but you can see a little bit of positive movement. Nowhere near enough to move the season averages, but, at least you get several sellouts in the season now and not just opening game, as we know. And then you have to continue to grow. I know now looking back, obviously people aren't excited about Swisher and Bourne, but they were when those guys were hired. Indians even couldn't take the best advantage of that because they had to wait, because they waited out the market for the money to be right. But even that's funny to say looking back 2 years later. But point is that most of the season tickets are sold for a baseball team in November, in December, Thanksgiving, Christmas time. And they couldn't even get the buzz that would have came from spending $117 million because they didn't do it until right before the season. Well, Swisher was in December, I believe, but Borney was a little bit later. But it didn't get the pop for the dollar that it could have gotten at the gate, which at that time it would have been. Now, obviously, not so much. But my point being that you have to grow it little by little, and so these little things count too. And some of the things are just whatever. The expanded kids clubhouse, that's great. If you've got 2 kids, it's a place for them to go play. They've worked on increasing social gathering space, a climate controlled 2-story bar in right field. Where people, that's one thing. I mean, if you've, and I know I'm not that guy, I watch the game, but I mean, if you've gone, especially the Browns, it's a great play. Their restaurants are packed throughout the game. Cavaliers too. There's some people, and I don't get it, but I've watched people that they'll be in the restaurant at the beginning of the game, then I'll stop in there and they'll be there at halftime. They're still there at the end of the game. I'm like, man, you came to the queue to sit in the restaurant and watch the game on the TV. I don't get that, but that seriously. But anyways, but that is part of it too. But to me, obviously, those are little things. Some of the bigger things is changing the bullpens. That's kind of cool. They're going to redo the bullpens there so that the players can kind of interact better there, and that's going to be cool. Open up some different seating. They'll obviously tier the pricing, I think, in that area too. But clearing out the opening up of the gate C area, that's going to be like one of the most noticeable changes there. And that's the main deal where people come in there. They're going to open it up. They're going to move a couple of the restaurants that are there, and there's the Batter's Eye, the Market Pavilion. They're going to move a couple of those kiosks out of the way, open that up. They're going to also tie in the statues. They're going to move the They're going to put Feller and Tomey and Larry Doby there at gate C, and they're going to open that whole thing up and tie it in to the Bruce in the chat room says, and now if ball don't get loose from the bullpen. That's always a good thing too. But they're going to tie it all in there, kind of where it rolls into downtown. The people downtown can see into the ballpark a little bit more. Just kind of opening things up and making it more free-flowing together with everything that's down there, changing some of the seating, and I'm sure there'll be some different tiered prices and different things like that. But, I mean, obviously, out of all of that, the 2 big ones, I do like what they're doing with Gate C in general, opening that up. But the Larry Doby statue, to me, is a big deal. That has nothing to do with fan enhancements or any of that. The Larry Doby statue should have been done a long time ago. I mean, you're talking about a guy who was just, a slight period of time away from being the very first African-American to play Major League Baseball. He followed up, what did he follow up Jackie Robinson by? Less than 2 months. And also first player, he didn't even go to the minor leagues. He went directly from the Negro Leagues to Major League Baseball, but 7-time All-Star center fielder. I mean, not just for the color barrier, breaking it in the American League and all of that. That's pioneer stuff as it is. That alone, to me, is a reason why he should have been either. I'm telling you, I can argue first, but I get Bob Feller too, and Bob Feller is a special breed as well. But regardless, those two should have been the first two statues before Jim Thome. Sorry if I upset anybody with that, but now that will be corrected. Yeah, I mean, really, now, that's it. 9 weeks. Thanks, Bruce, by the way. 9 weeks between him and Jackie Robinson. But now that will be corrected. But not just that. He played a big part in Indians history, too. I mean, remember, the 54 team wins 111 games, franchise record. Larry Doby was second for the MVP award voting, led the American League in home runs and RBIs, just missed the Triple Crown. I mean, for baseball reasons alone and for historical reasons, and then you put those together, it's a no-brainer that he should have had a statue. And I think that's a great thing that the Indians finally did. That's been one of my kind of things that I've been stuck on for a couple of years now, really, especially 2011 when they brought Thome back and they announced that. I'm like, man, come on, how could you go? And I know I've talked to the Indians about this, and they say, well, we named a street after him. I told you guys that. And I know to them that was good enough, but to many fans it wasn't. And, well, it doesn't matter, though. That is corrected. I think it's something that should have been done a long time ago, and I'm very glad that they made that announcement. So I'm sure there'll be middle of next season when there'll be a game and they'll introduce this, much like they did with Jim Thome, and that'll be a really good experience there. But Larry Doby finally being honored with the statue. See, Bruce was told the same thing in the chat room. They named a street after him, and they felt that that was a very different honor than having a statue. And there could be an argument made to that. I mean, how many people get a street named after him, you know? But this is, to some people, it's got to be visceral. It's got to be visual, and this is much more there. And I think that's good. You'll have the three of those together, kind of creating a historical area there as people are coming in. I like it. It's a long time coming, and I'm very glad that the Indians finally did that. It's one less thing I can complain about off the field. So now we just got to work on continuing to make some progress on the field as well. Let's talk about that a little bit. Obviously, last night did not go the way the Indians or Danny Salazar hoped. Danny Salazar had been rolling. Danny Salazar had been rolling since he came back. Was he 3-0, 2.0 ERA since he had come back to the big league rotation? He had really been, man, giving you some hope. We had it too here. Mike Brandenberry and I talked about it yesterday, that Salazar would give you a solid spot for the rest of the season. And then last night gave up a couple of big homers, 5 runs, and instantly after the start, optioned down to AAA. He was sent down. Now the team said he'll be called back up in 10 days once he's eligible, but he has to wait the 10 days before he can be called back up. The Indians actually right now only have 3 starting pitchers on the roster. They've got Kluber, Trevor Bauer, and TJ House. And House is going tonight for him. Carlos Carrasco, we talked about it this week, and it's coming. You can see it. You heard Terry Francona talk about stretching him out the other day, and I knew then. I said, man, I think they're going to give Carrasco another shot at this rotation before it's all said and done. But Salazar goes down. Josh Tomlin, and of course I get messages, and I got 4 different messages that basically all said, there goes your boy. And I'm like, why's he got to be my boy? He's got to be my boy because I was the one that was preaching for Josh Tomlin. So, but listen, I got Corey Kluber right, y'all, so back up off me a little bit about Josh Tomlin. But yeah, Josh Tomlin heading to the bullpen. Now, look, here's one good thing I will say about that. We mentioned, I think it was yesterday, Tomlin, first time through the lineup when he faces other teams. The other team's hitting a little bit over 200 against him. He does well the first time through the rotation against guys. So I know that that's got to be a part of what the Indians are thinking here, too. Plus, I think the other half is you switch him and Carrasco. Carrasco becomes the starter, and he becomes the long reliever. But perhaps he'll be more effective there. Maybe you can get some juice out of him down the stretch run, because there is some credence to that. If the first time around guys have a hard time getting to him, but then they knock him once they get his timing and they figure out that he's going to throw the ball very straight. They just have to figure out if it's going to go fast or slow. Once they figure that out, they figure out how to hit it very far away. So maybe he'll be more effective seeing guys, at least for the stretch run here, seeing guys in short bursts of 2 and 3 batters at a time, or doing what Carrasco was doing there. But I am not giving up on my man Josh Tomlin. I know yesterday Mike's like, listen, man, he is what he is. He's just not a very good pitcher. I can't argue with you when my guy's going through a streak like he's going. But, hey, if we're talking about building statues, last winter, I'm pretty sure a lot of y'all and me were building statues to Mickey Callaway. So if anybody can straighten out the Texan, if anybody can get Josh Tomlin going, it's going to be Sir Mickey Callaway. And we'll see how he comes back next year. Maybe Mike's right, but I'm not giving up on him just yet. I don't just give up on my guys. You